There's 3 or 4 whale strikes a year in the inner passage here. Whales that were hit by ships that have prop marks on them. Dorsal fins cut off, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
damn.
The oldest surviving grandmother is kind of the leader of the pod. And what they're theorizing is that one of these matriarchs was struck and killed by a boat. And the whales beneath her in the social structure started
fighting back.
And they're teaching their offspring to do the same thing.
Ahoy, ahoy to all you smooth sailors out there, and welcome aboard the Deck Tales podcast. I'm your host and captain, Sammy Catling, and this is where we dive headfirst into life at sea. From stunning destinations to unexpected storms, our guests have stories that will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe even shed a tear. Whether you're a seasoned sea dog or simply curious about life on board, Deck Tales is your boarding pass to a world of nautical narratives. My guest today is Mr. Ted Lund, a man who's wrestled giant fish, survived monster seas, spent his summers dodging whales in Alaska, and that's just a normal Tuesday. He's a veteran captain, award-winning journalist, and self-described modern-day whaler. Don't worry, the whales survive. He joins us from Juneau, Alaska, where the sun barely sets and the whales don't respect personal space. So let's anchor up and dive right in. Good afternoon, good evening, Ted.
Hey, how are you, Sam?
I'm very well, thank you. Been a bit of a rush to get back in time for our meeting today, but I made it. And it's good to see you.
Well, I'm quite a bit of ways from you. I'm up in Juneau, Alaska right now, finishing up the whale watching season and getting ready to head home to Florida.
Goodness, that's quite a bit more adventurous than my day.
It's a long journey. It's 4,000 miles.
Yeah. So how long are you over in Alaska for?
I was here since late April. So the whale watching season, primarily humpbacks, begins right about May 1st, really gets into the thick of it. And, we're running as many as 4 or 5 trips a day looking for humpback whales. The company that I work for has a whale guarantee actually from May 15th until September 15th. That you will see a humpback whale. And that's, man, I can't tell you how true that is. We had days where we'd pull out of the marina and there were whales right there in the channel. So you couldn't even get out. But, pretty spectacular. We had quite a bit of lunge feeding this year. This was the first season that I did it. I may go up to Skagway next year. A little bit rougher, a little bit larger boats, but also some different species of whales. That's kind of the southern range for belugas, but they do occasionally get some gray whales and sperm whales and stuff in that part of the inner passage. So pretty cool adventure. And the fishing is fantastic.
So you're all out fishing, watching whaling, not whaling. You're watching.
Well, watching. I have a Facebook page called The Modern Day Whaler, which is just kind of an aggregation point for me for all of the really cool videos that I find about whale watching, actually.
So just to confirm, you're not actually a modern day whaler.
Well, I am. We don't kill them.
Yeah, no, but that's what you think of when you hear whaler.
Well, we've evolved, and it's a shame. The humpback whales actually in the 1970s were almost hunted to functional extinction in the Pacific Ocean. And there was a gentleman, his background was actually studying animal sounds, and mainly terrestrial and forests and stuff like that. And he had never even heard of a whale, and was reading an article in the New York Times and came across it. I think this was in the late 60s. And ended up moving to Bermuda, where he could actually spend time with these whales and record them. Well, he'd got about 10 years of recordings in and actually made an album of the whales singing. This was in the Atlantic Ocean, out around Bermuda. But what was interesting was there was such an outpouring with the sound of these whales on this album. And actually, to this day, is still the number one selling nature album in the world. And it was actually mixed to a track by Judy Collins, so one of your guys' singers over in the UK. And it was actually, I believe it was Farewell to Tarawaith, which was a city in Ireland where the women all used to get on the cliffs and sing this song. The way that they mixed it, the whales complement this kind of really haunting tune. And it ended up being the inspiration for the Save the Whales movement and indirectly helped the whales, the humpback whales in particular, in the Pacific Ocean bounce back. Now there's something like 38,000 animals in that population that primarily comes to Southeast Alaska during the summer because of all the food sources available. And then they're in the gestation period there, the females are. Then they migrate straight line, which is kind of interesting. Some of the research I've been doing on it. When they leave here, which they're starting to do right now, they put on probably between 16,000 and 20,000 pounds of fat. They'll make the trip down to either, there's three different subgroups. They go to Hawaii, they go to Costa Rica, or they go to Mexico to give birth. And it's very interesting. They go directly in a straight line. They don't stop. They don't do anything. They don't feed while they're in those waters. They give birth and immediately start back to Alaska to feed again. So it's just this ongoing process. Unfortunately, it has become maybe a little too successful. Where I'm at here in Juneau, everybody runs out of a harbor called Orca Bay. There's 75 boats all competing for the same whales. So it is kind of a, I don't want to say a rat race, but it gets old after a while.
Yeah, people are trying to monopolize it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I think what I see coming in National Marine Fisheries, which is a branch of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, they have experience in limited entry fisheries. One of the things that we have in the Gulf of Mexico, where I guided for most of my life, where they can actually make you document that you've been historically a member of whatever fishery you're a part of. And ironically, they do consider whale watching a fishery. Even though there is no harvest. But I suspect that's probably going to be coming down the line here in Southeast Alaska sometime soon, that NOAA is going to say, okay, we're going to allow 30 boats, that's it. And if you haven't been doing it for 10 or 15 years, you can't document it, then sorry, but goodbye.
They need to cap it somewhere.
Yeah, too much of a good thing is never good.
Well, so let's just go back a little bit, because we jumped straight in without any kind of proper introduction. So we got connected via Rich Napolitano, who's got the podcast Shipwrecks and Sea Dogs, who is also another Floridian. Are you neighbors with him?
No, but we actually kind of grew up together in college at the University of Florida. Okay. We lived in the same dorm. And it's funny because we first met. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. It was like the first day of the semester. And I walked into this common area in our dorm, and he was the only person there watching something on TV. It was around the first part of the first Gulf War back in the early 90s. And he and I immediately got into an argument about politics. And, we saw that through. And then I looked at him and I said, hey, you want to go across the street and get a beer? He's like, yeah, okay.
You've been friends ever since?
We've been best friends ever since. Yes,
oh, that's
absolutely.
Lovely. That's great. I mean, friends kind of bond over the strangest of things sometimes.
I just did an interview with him actually the other day for my Substack. And we've known each other now for the better parts of our lives. That we've been friends longer than we haven't been. So, yeah. A very, very dear friend.
What's the Substack on? What's the topic?
It's actually, I cover, for years, I was a writer for the Miami Herald, very iconic newspaper, local paper in Key West called Solaris Hill. And then I had 3 or 4 different stints at the Key West Citizen. So I cover city government, county government, things like that. And also just kind of quirky, fun stories. So that's Above the Fold on Substack. So people can find it there. It's interesting. I've been doing that since before I came out to Juneau. And I get more people contacting me with story leads, not being in Key West, than I did when I was there. So
typical, isn't it?
Well, and kind of nice because people can't find me. So I don't have to worry about running into somebody at the grocery store or at the doctor's office.
Yeah. You've got couple different hats that you wear, Ted.
Yes.
You're a captain. You're a journalist.
Yes.
Are those your two top titles?
Yeah, I would say those are the two. Yeah, probably the two. Well, captain, the fishing guide. I have 36 world records for my customers over a 20-year span, specializing in fly fishing in saltwater. Some of those tunas, big fish, stuff that people don't necessarily think about on the fly rod. But yeah, I would say that's the two.
That was for you. Just putting that wallpaper on. The solo man fishing on the.
I like your office better than mine.
Well, it changes every time, Ted. I kind of.
So does mine.
Yeah. Well, so where are you now? You're in Juneau.
Yes, Juneau, Alaska, which ironically is the capital. And for folks that might not be familiar with the geography here, there's no road in or out. It's either a ferry or an airplane.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that it's the capital and it's like the hardest place to get to in Alaska. So,
but is it the place everyone tries to get to, the tourist trap or the area? Stuff going on?
Primarily their tourism industry here consists of cruise ships, ironically, which is funny because I've been a big cruise ship opponent in Key West, and they cause a lot more problems than they solve for Key West. Here, you've got deeper water. You don't have the sedimentation, siltation problems that you do in Florida. And I think being a cold water environment, it's a little more resilient up here as far as those impacts. And to be honest with you, Juneau, Key West, they let the cruise ship industry just kind of run amok. And here they've got it pretty well locked down. I'd have to say it's the most organized I've ever seen.
In terms of restricting them coming in, having a
yes.
Cap? Having a cap.
Yes, and well, I not so much a cap. They're up to 5 ships a day sometimes.
Is that too many?
Well, they've got the space for it, and it is a tremendous financial influx for the community from about May to this time, maybe October, into October. But they really kind of control and just kind of herd people the right way. They've got people that actually man the crosswalks and make cars stop for people so they don't get run over. Just a very, very well organized.
But in your opinion, do the cons outweigh the pros?
They certainly do in Key West. And I did a very interesting story. I had caught the city of Key West as an incentive. They were selling water to cruise ships for less than they were buying it for. So they were essentially subsidizing the cruise ships with fresh water. And that got me to thinking, these guys, they're too cheap to run their desal plants to fill their water up. So they come to Key West, they take on all this water, and then they send their passengers into town. And their passengers, when I analyze it, and this was, 25 years ago, maybe longer.
Just to say, desal is desalination. That's how they make fresh. That's how they make water drinkable.
Yes, and they could very well use that, top their water supplies off, but they weren't, because it was cheaper to get water from Key West than to operate these desal plants on the boat.
Wow.
So I then started analyzing the impact of each passenger. So you've got 8,000 people on some of these ships, and they'd get off the boat, they'd buy 1.5 drinks, a T-shirt, and they'd flush our toilets 4 times. Now multiply that times 4, that outweighs the entire full-time population of Key West. So they're putting stress on the infrastructure in Key West that it wasn't designed for. I mean, it's a little island of 22,000 people year round. So it was kind of a problem.
It's interesting. Well, I'm very glad that we've connected, because
me too.
I have yet to have someone on the podcast who is, not objective, but opposed to the industry in many ways. For the most part, the people I interviewed in the first and second series were all crew, or the last 2 of season 2 were cruise ship YouTube vloggers. So they're pretty much all pro. Either was working in it, is still working in it, or is enjoying it from a guest's perspective. So it's good. We've got some.
Well, ironically, that may be my next gig. I'm actually am in line to become a historian for American cruising. conference.
So going on to do lectures.
Yes. And what's interesting about American Cruise Lines is so the city of Key West 3 times now has voted to ban cruise ships.
Mm.
But there's one cruise ship dock in Key West that is privately owned by the Walsh family. They're the largest privately owned hospitality company in the United States. So they have this 100-year lease on this cruise ship dock. They can do whatever they want. Sometimes they have 2 ships in there a day. A ship will come in for a half a day in the morning, and then they'll leave, and another boat will come in. But the city actually was overturned 3 times by the governor of the state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and threatened that they weren't going to get any funding if they restricted maritime commerce. So what the city has done now is they put a cap on the size of boats that can use city facilities. And American Cruise Lines is actually one of those. And it's a much smaller kind of boutique luxury cruise. I believe they only have maybe 1,500 passengers, if that.
Ooh.
So, and a higher, better demographic, more money, and people that are kind of interested in the cultural thing instead of going to Sloppy Joe's and Fat Tuesdays. So.
That's what you mean by better, just a bit more respectful,
yes.
And not just like, woo woo, I'm on a boat, bitch.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Ted, at the moment, I'm just thinking of so many things. The neurons in my brain are firing left, right, and center. I don't know what question to ask you next because you've got a wealth of experience and we've only got a limited amount of time. But as I said, it's good to, connect with somebody that is from this side of the debate, someone who's actually looking at it from a perspective of we need to do better because this can't continue at the rate it is. And for your information, just so you know, I did a second book that I wrote over 2 years ago. I finished it, and it was a continuation of my first book, Seems Like Smooth Sailing. It was a comedy retrospective memoir that I wrote. And it's available on Audible. It's as an ebook and as on Audible as well as an audio book. Check it out. But yeah, I just wanted to say the second book I wrote, I called You Cruise, You Lose. And it was a continuation of the first book, but the first book was published the day we went into lockdown. And I was like, well, how's the industry?
Well, that probably helped, I would think.
No, not really, because you need money to market. And all my work dried up, so I didn't, and it's about money at the end of the day. But so anyway, I was kind of like, how's the industry going to cope? How's it going to deal with the guests, the crew, and all of that stuff? And I fell into a rabbit hole of research. And 2 years later, I'd finished this book, which is about, I'd say 400 pages. Yeah. And it's just been sitting on the shelf because all the agents of the world in the literary world, they like low-hanging fruit. They want something that's got a, guaranteed return of investment or, spotting of a whale.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why I started this Substack is I've been doing exactly what I'm doing now for Knight Ridder, for Thompson newspapers, for all these other companies, and have nothing to show for it. So I might as well, if I'm going to be doing it, I might as well be doing it for myself.
Yeah.
I've been shocked, and Rich and I talk about this quite a bit because of the success of his podcast. I am, for 4 months in, doing pretty well as far as subscribers. Paid subscribers kind of lagging, but it's still at a higher percentage rate based on the number of subscribers that I have with conversions. So as long as I can scale that, it should be fine.
Just going back real quick, just to wrap up. So the second book I wrote, Seems Like Smooth Sailing's sequel, You Cruise, You Lose. I basically wrote the history of the cruise industry, the negatives of the entire pollution output, and a lot of research went into it. So yeah, I'm trying to build my followers so that I can attract a proper publishing deal, because as I'm sure you're aware, if you self-publish stuff like this and you haven't got a following these days, people are like, who the fuck are you? Yeah.
My idea for self-publishing is to write little books about the Keys and get them in the airport in Key West.
Oh yeah, that's lovely.
If I could do that, then
little novellas,
some things would sell. Yeah.
I read a while back about the interference cruise ships have on the migration patterns of whales.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that,
yeah.
in Key West in particular, there's a thriving recreational fishing business, which I was a part of, and it has irreversibly changed not only the ecology in the harbor in Key West. It used to have a lot of soft corals and even stony corals, but with the sedimentation issue, because the ships are too big for the channel that we have, and there was actually a study that came out a year and a half or 2 years ago that they tried to, I guess bury would be the better term for it, that each cruise ship coming into Dock B, which is the one that's owned by the Walsh family, stirs up as much sediment as one hurricane.
No, don't even get me started.
So, what's interesting is
yeah.
Our tarpon is like our number one recreational species in the Florida Keys. And we would get, every spring, we get schools of hundreds of thousands of these fish, up to 200 pounds. And they like to sit in Key West Harbor and up and down the channel. Well, what's interesting is, it's 6 miles pretty much from the dock to the reef where the sea buoy is. So you can be sitting in the channel right at the tip of Key West and have 20,000 fish around you. And one ship makes that dog leg down the main ship channel and they just sink and go away. So, yeah, it's good for somebody. There's one individual in Key West that during the 70s bought up everything he possibly could, including the conch train. And he put all these little businesses around. And when you get off the cruise ship, you pay, you get on the conch train, and then you go to every one of these little things that he's built.
What
he owns
train?
The Key West Aquarium, the conch train.
Conch, like? Yeah,
that was started back in the 60s as a tourism thing. And it looks like a little locomotive. And it kind of harkens back to the days of Henry Flagler, who really put Key West in touch with the mainland with the overseas railway. But he's basically turned Key West into his own little private Disney World. So you get on the conch train, you're a captive audience, you go to every little shop or attraction that he has, and that's all you see, which is not really indicative of Key West, or at least the Key West I know.
It's good business, but yeah, it's not.
Oh, they make a lot of money.
It's just not off the beaten track. It's very much the most trodden path.
Yes.
The migration patterns of whales, they are massively affected in and around Alaska and other parts of the world because of cruise ships. What does the impact mean for whales? Like, what are they having to do? How are they being disrupted?
Well, literally the impact is there's 3 or 4 whale strikes a year in the inner passage here. It turns into a mortality event. I can send you photos. I think I still have them of the whales that were hit by ships that have prop marks on them.
The propellers.
Dorsal fins cut off. Yeah.
Damn.
I had one couple on one of the trips this year that when they pulled into port, there was a whale carcass on the bulbous bow of the ship. So that's a pretty common occurrence here.
It's not like you've got underwater sort of traffic control, with the speed cameras kind of, seeing who's going.
Yeah.
There's no one to say, oh, it was his fault, because you can see on the camera. Like, how does a whale not see a cruise ship to avoid it? Obviously, you said earlier, but it just makes a straight line when it's migrating. Is that it? It just kind of goes into autopilot.
I think they're on autopilot at that point, yeah. And they're so big.
Yeah.
That the locomotive portion of it is at the back of the boat, and they can actually at 25 or 30 knots end up getting to the whale before the whale realizes that something is wrong. So,
dear. Well, okay.
And now in Florida we've got the endangered right whales that migrate past Cape Canaveral every year. Now we're going to have the exploding SpaceX Starship, which is the largest, I believe it's the largest rocket ever made, that's going to be causing problems. Sonic booms, all kind of stuff. So,
is that on a spaceship like on an airplane they call it the flight deck. Do they also have like a space deck? I'm just trying to think if it's relevant.
Well, they have with SpaceX in particular, they have a landing pad. So,
Yeah.
and I've actually watched pretty much every significant launch having grown up there. I actually watched the Columbia blow up outside of it through the window in our high school cafeteria. But they do come back now. SpaceX, Elon Musk has figured out how to recycle the boosters and have them come back. And the first time that ever happened, I wasn't aware of it. And I was in my house that I owned in Cocoa Beach, and I thought we were under attack. It was like midnight, and all of a sudden there's two loud sonic booms. The windows are rattling. And those Falcon rockets are a lot smaller than this Starship. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Plus, they're talking about starting oil exploration off the coast. So that, for whales and dolphins, is just literally mind-blowing, unfortunately.
Well, then this show has got legs into space. We're going to extend Deck Tales above and beyond to infinity and beyond, I think.
Tales from the stars.
Yeah, it's still a deck. You mentioned Florida right just now, and you did say a word earlier. Was it soft coral? You said.
Yes, I like gorgonians, sea fans, things like that.
Right.
As opposed to stony corals, which are what you think of, the branches and the plates and everything like that.
Yes, yes. But in Florida, I believe, and I'm going off the top of my head here, just because of what I've read and researched in the past. 2012 was when they coined the term SCTLD, stony coral tissue loss disease. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
I just patted myself on the back.
Not only are warming conditions causing die-off of coral, but the resilient corals, the ones that can handle it, are stopping growth.
Because they're just giving up?
I think the water's too warm. There's another thing. A friend of mine, Martin Moe, that was on the National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council, is doing a lot of work in what they call endocrine disruptors, which is blood pressure medicine, Viagra, anything that we put into our bodies that ends up in wastewater. All of these chemicals, even though the wastewater is treated, then end up in our nearshore waters. And that was considered instrumental in the blight for the long-spine sea urchin that wiped out long-spine sea urchins pretty much all throughout the Caribbean, because these endocrine disruptors affect their reproductive habits. So interesting thing that Martin and some other researchers have found is that if you take a queen conch, which is our mascot in the Florida Keys, a big, beautiful marine snail, the ones in nearshore waters aren't reproducing. The ones off the deep reef, where we get the Gulf Stream current flowing through, bringing high volumes of clean water into the area, are spawning. So what they've started doing, just to see what the effect was they took the ones from offshore, took the ones from inshore, and swapped them and monitored them. And the ones that they moved offshore started reproducing, and the ones that they put into the nearshore contaminated waters stopped. Scary and mind-blowing to think of that.
Is this coming?
A lot to unpack.
Does that come under the category of bioaccumulation? No, not bioaccumulation. Sorry.
I think there would be some amount of that. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But that's actually not what I was thinking of. Ballast tank kind of wastewater is a problem with regards to cruise ships kind of taking microorganisms from one place and then offloading them in another place.
Invasive species are a big issue with that. I know that there's a species of jellyfish that came from the Pacific Ocean called a fish egg eating jellyfish that we didn't have in the Atlantic. In the Indian River and Banana River lagoons, because they came out of ballast water on cargo ships and cruise ships.
I just wanted to say, before we go into that as fully as we would, just to lay the foundation for anyone who's like, what the hell is
Oh yeah,
ballast? Ballast tanks are the big rooms at the bottom of the ship that fill with water and help the ship to stay submerged in the water, and it pulls in microorganisms from the place where it's at, and then when it gets to its destination, it's known to displace that water, sometimes introducing foreign species to a place it shouldn't be. So this has been a problem for many, many years, and I'm trying to keep this episode light, but it's just not going that way at all.
Well, I mean, it's being a journalist and having seen the changes, I'm drawn to that kind of stuff.
You lost a lot of sleep over. I'm sure some of the things that you've read and witnessed.
I don't know. I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning.
You mean in
thing
terms
that
of
is really interesting
in terms of your research?
Well, no, of being here.
Right. Okay.
One day, every day is one day closer to the end.
Okay.
But one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever done was with Yvon Chouinard, who is, for people that aren't familiar with the name, the founder of the Patagonia Clothing Company. And Yvon is a very, very passionate environmentalist, and he funds a chair at the Scripps Oceanography Institute. And this was 2006 when I interviewed him about this. And the researcher that he funds at Scripps, for every pound of plankton that he trawled in the Pacific Ocean, and we're talking like deep Pacific Ocean, out near the garbage patch of flotsam, way out in the Pacific. For every pound of living plankton that this guy trawls, he gets 7 pounds, or at least at that time, 7 pounds of plastic nodules, which are the size of a grain of sand. And they're the last form of a plastic water bottle or a plastic bag or anything made out of plastic as it deteriorates. So it looks just like plankton. What's happening is all of the sardines and the forage species that live out in that area that then migrate inshore are feeding on all these plastic nodules and expending all this energy and getting no caloric return from it. And then when the whales eat the herring or whatever species of forage it is, the plastics are then ingested by the whales.
Bioaccumulated.
Yes, absolutely. And what's even scarier is the plastic nodules that aren't getting eaten are settling on the thermocline and affecting the convection currents, which are really the kind of the pulse of the Pacific Ocean. So, and I did actually read the Gulf of Panama. This is the first time scientists have ever recorded that their upwellings have stopped.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Smithsonian Institute just put something out about that.
Oh, okay. You mentioned, in short, you had lots of fun stories and stuff over the years. You mentioned you bumped into Captain Phillips.
Yes, I actually ran into him at the Navy SEAL Museum in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
And I don't know if that is technically a lighthearted story.
Well, it's interesting. I somewhere I have a photo of me with him in front of the lifeboat, in front of the bullet holes.
Damn. Okay. And just before you tell the story, it's the film with Tom Hanks where he's taken hostage by Somalian pirates, people. That's the film. That's the guy we're talking about. Yeah.
And, I asked him, I said, how do these guys attack a 700-foot ship and climb up the side of it? And he goes, well, they're faster than you think they are. And, they've spent most of their lives running from things that try to eat them. So jumping onto a moving ship at 15 knots out of a 25-foot panga is not really that intimidating for them.
Sure.
And then, of course, the lifeboat that I was talking about with the bullet holes in it, they took him hostage. And he was with them for several days before a team of Navy SEAL snipers actually neutralized the pirates. And I asked him, I said, so after a couple of days, how did it smell in there? And he just kind of looked at me and shook his head. And he goes, exactly like you think it would.
Oh, yeah. If there was anyone thinking about watching the film, you just spoiled the ending.
Well,
It's been
If
out
they
for
haven't seen it by now, if they're a fan of ships and they haven't seen it by now. Yeah, very, very nice guy.
When was that incident?
It was
Yeah.
I think in the mid 2000s when all of that was going on. Now, I did notice, I saw the other day that I guess the killer whales are back at it off Portugal. They sank one sailboat and damaged another one. And I understand that off Scotland, these whales are reproducing that behavior, which is obviously a learned behavior. And about 15 years ago, I was running my boat back in from probably 60 miles northwest of Key West with my customers in the afternoon. We're running about, I don't know, probably 30 knots and twin 200 horsepower engines on the back of the boat. So we're scooting along pretty good.
Yeah.
We're in 90 feet of water, and all of a sudden it was like I hit a coral head. And I pulled the throttle back, and the people got up off the seat up front, and they're like, what's going on? And I turn around, and there's about a 6-foot tall dorsal fin and a white patch and a giant exhale, a big spout. So it was clearly, it was a killer whale. It's one of my favorite marine animals.
Orca.
And I waited to see if it would come back up. Never saw it again. So we ran back in, and I actually have some friends that were pretty senior killer whale trainers at SeaWorld in Orlando. And I was asking them, do you think I hit it? Because I didn't see any blood or, blubber or anything like that, which you would expect if you hit one at that speed with twin outboard engines. Mm. And my friend just kind of shook his head and smiled. He goes, no, it hit you. You were in its way. And it didn't like you being there.
So he went for you.
Well, he hit us. Tell us kind of to stay out of the way. The research I've been reading about these whales in the Mediterranean and up off the coast of Scotland, this is a learned behavior that they're passing down. And what scientists are theorizing is that because killer whales live in a matriarchal society, the women rule the roost, pretty much like humans. Mm-hmm. And the oldest surviving grandmother is kind of the leader of the pod. And what they're theorizing is that one of these matriarchs was struck and killed by a boat. And the whales beneath her in the social structure started
fighting back.
That was the phrase I was going to use. I don't know whether that's the correct one or not. And they're teaching their offspring to do the same thing, which I found was kind of interesting. They have a similar thing here with humpback whales in an event they call bubble feeding, which is one of the most incredible natural events I've ever seen, where you've got 15 or 20 humpback whales, which the only time you ever see them in those kind of numbers together is when they're doing this bubble net feeding.
Bubble net feeding?
Bubble net, yep. So what they do is there's one or two whales that's all they do is blow bubbles. So the whales will come up for air. They really kind of hyperventilate, get as much air as they can. The two that are bubble net throwers will go down first, and they'll surround a school of herring. The herring and I believe anchovies here are the two primary bait foods. But they'll actually surround the ball of bait with these bubble nets. The other whales are now coming down and getting to the bottom of this bubble net. The bubble net throwers will actually emit a sound that scares the bait to the surface, and the bait won't scatter because they're confined by the bubbles. And all of a sudden, these 15 whales will come up with their mouths open, gulping 400 or 500 pounds of herring at a time. It's pretty awesome. I'll try and send you the video.
That's so cool. I've never seen or heard anything like that. But yeah.
And that's a learned behavior. Actually, this summer, I saw a known bubble net thrower that a mother humpback whale had sent her baby off with this whale to learn how to bubble net on his own. So
how do you do it by yourself? Interesting.
Well, that's a method of feeding called lunge feeding. So they'll blow the bubbles and then they'll come up themselves.
Oh, they'll blow the bubbles and then they'll come back up around.
They'll come up through and gulp.
That's so cool.
I think I've got videos of that too. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. They
didn't have that in Free Willy.
No, not at all.
Did you watch all of the Free Willy films?
No, I hate to say it, and I know it's not very popular in the UK, but I'm a fan of captivity. And if I had, $100 million, I'd probably have 10 killer whales.
We're trying to move with the times, I guess, I suppose. Well, that documentary Blackfish, and you must have seen that.
Oh, I have. Dawn Brancho was a friend of mine, the lady that was killed.
Oh, wow.
And my good friend Brian had just left work, and he got a call after about a second Jack and Coke that they needed him to come back to work, that there had been an incident. And he actually spent 28 hours next to Tilly, or Tillicum, who was the whale, in a medical pool with Dawn. Her body was covered, but they had a tent kind of covering her so the helicopters couldn't fly around for the TV stations and stuff. And he told me that Tillicum sat there with his eye looking at her the whole time, wondering why she wasn't playing anymore.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Didn't even know
Blackfish was not a very accurate. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that a killer whale plays, their idea of what's fun is not necessarily conducive to us.
Yeah, when they're blowing bubbles, it seems innocent until they try and catch the bubbles. But that was where, sorry, that Blackfish incident. It was like a
SeaWorld Orlando.
It was SeaWorld
Orlando.
SeaWorld. Yeah. So, but as a result of this incident, a lot of killer whales have been released out of captivity.
No, they can't for a couple of different reasons.
They wouldn't survive.
Ever since there's that. Ever since the Keiko incident, or the Keiko rehabilitation. Plus, there are also issues with whether or not the whales might have pathogens that aren't native to where they're going to be released. They may have caught something in captivity that if you take them and fly them to Iceland where they were caught, or bring them back up to the Pacific Northwest, they're going to introduce something. So that's really one of the major issues. And actually, the last time they tried to release some animals in Iceland, the Icelandic government denied permission because of that very issue.
Would do more damage than good.
Yeah. Well, and the whale's going to die.
Fascinating though. Really is a good counter argument, or something to be
kind of one of my hobbies. It's kind of one of my hobbies. I like killer whales.
Yeah. No, I got that. You're out in Alaska for the 6 months of the year trying. Was it 6 months you said?
It was close to about 13 weeks. So what's that? 5 months.
Okay, but you're the captain of the boat that's taking people out to go and see it. Well, how long do people come on the boat for? Just in the afternoon?
It's our trips were about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So
we run 4 a day. During that time of summer, it doesn't get dark until 9:30 at night, and then the sun comes up at about 4. So it's took a little bit of getting used to.
Yeah. Going into some of your other experiences outside of Wales, one of the things you mentioned in your brief to me was that you got stuck in the dry tortugas of what became the perfect storm. I'm fascinated. I want to hear all about this.
Well, I was probably 15 or 16. And actually, the family that I'm going to visit in Tennessee, father had hired a friend of mine to take them on a charter for like a week down in the dry tortugas. So we had I think it was a 48-foot Hatteras that we were using as kind of our mothership base of operations. And then we had a 25-foot center console that we towed down there. And the weather was bad. We didn't know how bad it was going to get. But the weather was bad, and it really should have been a no-go trip. But this gentleman was very, very wealthy. He just passed away last year. He was one of my best clients when I got into guiding. Insisted that we go. So the guy on the mothership was like, okay, well, let's go. And the plan was to run the small boat down there, and then we'd have fuel and everything on the mothership, but we were going to fish our way down. Well, it was so rough, we couldn't do that in a 25-foot center console. So we ended up bridling the boat and towing it, and we got down into Rebecca Channel, which is one of the nastiest stretches of water I've ever operated in.
For what? Choppiness?
You get wind against the tide in there, and it's brutal. It's a ship killer, actually. That's right down near where the Atocha fleet went down during that hurricane. So we get about halfway through Rebecca Channel, which is, I think, is about 20 miles wide. And all of a sudden, the 25-foot center console breaks free. And we're like in 8-foot seas, and we're getting tossed around.
Damn.
And who should get chosen to jump in the water and go retrieve the 25-foot center console and bring it back so we could reattach it to the boat? Me. I got volunteered at 16 years old. And, one of the problems with that stretch of water is some of the biggest things in the ocean swim through there.
Yeah.
If you look at OSearch, who are the guys that are doing all of the satellite tagging of white sharks, they all swim through there, up into the Gulf of Mexico. There are some that come through Boca Grande Channel, which is closer. And a friend of mine actually hooked one there probably 20 years ago. But it was not a lot of fun. So we get into eyesight of where we could just see the fort, which is a very special place. I recommend anybody, if they're going to be in Key West, I recommend taking the seaplane down and spending the day down there. You can actually snorkel all the way around it. But it's really just a fascinating structure that was actually the most powerful weapon made by man until the atom bomb. You don't really think of forts in that term.
No.
Because they're a fixed fortification. But it was there to protect the shipping lanes from
killer whales,
Confederate. Confederate. Confederate pirates, essentially.
Oh my God. Oh God. Sorry, my head is just like.
Well, in Key West, it's
too many questions.
I do harbor tours down there occasionally, and we have forts that were built at the same time in Key West. We have Fort Zachary Taylor, which is on Key West Harbor proper. Then we have East Martello and West Martello, which are two other forts that were built. But one of the interesting things I mention to people is that I ask them, I say, so which side of the Civil War was Key West on? And invariably they'll say,
okay. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Which side?
Well, you're going to surprise me. You just said they were fighting against Confederate pirates.
Well, I said the fort down there was.
Oh, okay. So the Confederacy, I guess.
No, Key West was the only part of Florida that did not secede.
Oh, wow.
And it was also at that time, because of the wrecking industry, it was the wealthiest city in the United States.
So what was sorry, I'm being stupid now, because the term Confederacy is the southern states who were fighting against.
Correct.
What was the other side?
Union.
The Union.
The Union.
Sorry. Yeah. I can't research everything for every interview I ever do, for goodness sake. That was the only place.
But it's the only part of Florida that didn't secede.
I love the film Glory with Matthew
Denzel Washington and
Broderick. Very good film. No spoilers on that one. If you haven't seen Glory, go and watch Glory.
They all know that the Confederate lost, so
they all do.
Or hopefully they do.
Yeah, but we're strafing away from Deck Tales here, kind of loosely near the shoreline, I guess.
So we're getting into eye range of the Dry Tortugas, and the captain of the mothership.
That's the story.
Without even looking up, is driving straight forward at the helm on the bridge, and he just goes, "Well, that went much better than I could have hoped or expected," because it was rough. So eventually, that low that came from the west ended up meeting up with that high pressure ridge and blew from the Tortugas all the way up the eastern seaboard, and eventually becoming a part of the Andrea Gale tragedy. And ironically, a friend of mine who introduced fluorocarbon monofilament into the recreational market in the United States, which just really quick cliff notes. Fluorocarbon monofilament is a chemical resistant industrial use material. They actually make pipes out of it for acid and things like that. But they started making monofilament fishing line out of it, leader material, and it actually disappears in water. And it made its debut in the commercial industry. Japan had been using it for decades, and the longliners in the Atlantic started using it. Well, my friend Frank Frank Thompson, was the captain of one of the other boats that went east to get away from the storm instead of heading into it like the Andrea Gale did. So,
Goodness.
I've met a lot of people.
You've met a lot of people.
Rich Napolitano, a mutual friend, I tell him these stories. I went to Oman when I was in college to work on developing a recreational fishing program for the Sultan through a friend of mine that knew some of those, I guess, the royal family over there. And, I tell these stories and Rich will just look at me and he'll go, you know what, if anybody else told me that, I'd think they were full of it. But he goes, I know that you've actually done this stuff.
Well, yeah. Is it often kind of like that with you and Rich? Like, because no, you're the seafarer out of the two of you. Rich is the one that's kind of.
He's never been fishing with me.
Which is
never
amazing.
Been out on the boat with me.
Considering someone like he's got a podcast all about ships and sea dogs, and yet he's never gone out on the ships and all the boats.
Well, hopefully we're gonna change that.
Yeah.
Here soon.
Yeah. Well, we'll get a petition going. Or something.
Well, we got to get you over there.
Yeah, I'm due a holiday. Goodness me. You've travelled all over the world, including the Middle East. Is there a trip or an assignment that really changed how you see the world?
The trip to the Middle East was interesting because I was a guest of the government. And so this would have been 1991, I think. And I had a handler that went with me. I was over there for a month and he went everywhere with me. And I kept trying to go to the American embassy just because I had never been that far from home. And I just wanted to see what the embassy was like. And they wouldn't let me go. And then finally we're out one day and I said, we don't have anything else to do. I want to go to the embassy. So he took me to the embassy. They wouldn't let him through the gate. So I had to walk through all the concrete barriers and anti-terrorism stuff and went in and had lunch with a couple of civilian employees.
Well, that was in air quotes.
Yeah.
For the audio listeners.
Yes. I'm pretty sure they were CIA people.
Right. Okay.
And they already knew that I was in the country, and they were asking me all kinds of questions about where I'd been and this and that. And one of the areas that I had gone to was Salalah in the southern end of the country, which absolutely has the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. Costa Rica, Australia, Florida, California, no place even comes close to this.
Salallah's where it's at.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Miles and miles of white coral sand beaches, crystal blue water, and no tourists. And I was actually staying in a Holiday Inn when we were down there, and the northern Yemen army was firing rockets over the border occasionally into Oman. So middle of the night, you wake up with air raid sirens going off. But I had mentioned to these guys that I had gone to Salalah, and they wanted to know if they had shown me the death camps that they have there.
As you do.
No. Yeah. I'm like, no, they didn't. And they said, well, that's where they send all the political enemies and things like that. It's pretty brutal. So what I learned was, A, it's good to be a guest of the Sultan. They take pretty good care of you. But B, they only show you what they want you to see. Yeah,
I was about to say that. Surely it's very.
And I think that was a really important. Yeah.
Did you?
He's now since passed away, unfortunately. But
yeah,
he was old. Interesting story there. Sultan Qaboos, when he was Qaboos.
Okay.
When he was getting ready to go to college, he went to Sandhurst. And Oman they were actually the first country to recognize the United States as a sovereign nation before anybody else, the French, anybody. When we went independent, Oman was the first place. A very, very seafaring nation, actually. They were the ones that went over, back and forth to India in the spice trade and all that long before the British were doing that. But anyway, the country was very, very oppressive. His father was a horrible dictator. They were literally in the Stone Ages then. And Al Said, who was Sultan Qaboos, went to Sandhurst, and his senior project was enacting a coup in his homeland sending his father into exile and modernizing the country. And lo and behold, two of his friends from college, who were from British military families, went home with him to Oman, and they enacted the plan. And they exiled his father to, I forget what, it's one of the big hotels in London. Is where the father finished out his life. And they went on this big kick of modernizing Oman. And they've been eating fish there, big commercial fishing, artisan commercial fishing industry there for thousands of years. And one of the first things they did was bring in consultants from Norway and Sweden all about how to take care of the fish, and, make sure that they have refrigerated trucks to move them inland to the souks. Well, these people have been eating spoiled fish for thousands of years. So now all of a sudden they start putting the fish on ice in the boats. They bought these little Toyota trucks with refrigerator backs on them. And they take the fish from the shore, all iced down the way they should be, put them in the refrigerator trucks, take them to the souks inland. And nobody was used to eating non-spoiled fish, and it made everybody sick. And they thought it was the trucks. So they'd be driving down these roads, and these brand new Toyota refrigerator trucks were abandoned all across the countryside.
So they went back to the spoiled fish?
Yeah. Well, they've advanced a little bit since then.
What's the capital of Oman?
Muscat.
Yes, I docked there once upon a time in 2009, I think. Mm-hmm. Don't really remember much of it, I'm afraid. But that's because I was only there.
It's come a long way since I was there.
Yeah, but it was like a month in the UAE when I was there. It was after the Seychelles, which was the best part of my travels in that year. And
Salalah reminds me a lot of. I have not been to the Seychelles, but it looks a lot like.
Yeah, my friend is living. My friend is living out there now. His girlfriend is from the Seychelles, and he is doing freediving instructing. And I went to an event that he was holding in London a couple months back, and he had all these freedivers come and attend. And after the event, we've all gone and had a couple drinks, and I started asking a couple of them, so how deep have you guys dived? And they just kind of, a few of them, they gave me this kind of like this look of like, I can't believe you just asked me that. I was like, what? Why? And it's like, well, that's like asking me how much money I've got in the bank. And I was like, what? No. It's not really.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than the free divers in Florida.
Yeah. Well, what's the free divers?
They'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
Oh, they'll tell you. Yeah.
It's not like you're free diving. That's the only thing to ask.
Well, it's like asking me what's the biggest fish I ever caught. It's the 550-pound tiger shark. Actually, that's not true. The biggest fish I've ever caught. I spent a month on a mothership in Australia on assignment for Fly Fishing and Saltwaters, which was a magazine I helped found and ended up as the editor-in-chief. And the first day we got on the water, we were postponed because naturally I show up there after a 28-hour flight from the East Coast, and there's a typhoon moving in on the Great Barrier Reef. So we finally got the weather to where we could get the mothership out there, and the game boats followed us. And it was so rough, we were tucked in behind Ribbon Reef 7, which is a world-renowned marlin fishing spot. Mm-hmm. And we're out in the boat, and we're listening to the radio. We've hooked 2 or 3 fish. I'm with a friend of mine who is also a fishing guide from Key West, because this trip, if you were a guide and you brought 2 paying anglers, I went for free as a journalist. But if you were a guide, like my friend RT, and then this other guy, John Donnell, who's a really famous fisherman in Isla Morada, they brought a couple of people each. So they were on this trip. And the 2 people that Trossett brought ended up getting deathly seasick because it was so rough. And we're out, and every boat in the fleet is hooking black marlin. These guys, the paying guys, wanted to go back to the mothership, which, really your seasickness is not going to get any better when you get on the mothership. Right.
It's already started.
So we take him back, and the captain was actually kind of annoyed that we had to go back to the boat. And I started looking at him and my friend RT, and I said, look, we're here. We're probably never going to ever be here again, and the bite's going on. So, would you mind taking us back out? And the captain's like, absolutely not. Let's go. And in 4 hours, we released 6 black marlin. His biggest fish was probably about 900, and I caught one probably about 650. So we it's all catch and release. But
I don't even know
yeah,
how.
I don't know why nobody would tell. They're not going to tell you how deep they swam.
Yeah, it's like yeah. So well, I mean, so yeah, my friend, going back to that, he's only been out there a year and a half or so, but I was helping him train, like loosely, just by like being his buddy in the pool, holding my hand on his back, timing him whilst he was doing his static breath holds, etc. But yeah, so he's living out there for a long time, it seems now, like a year and a half. And I had said to him, you're always welcome to come on Deck Tales, because you got to go on a boat to go and do your free dive. So technically you could be a guest. And I'm waiting, Ted. I'm waiting for my invitation to go out there and be able to stay with him and his girlfriend. But I won't hold my breath.
Nice. I see what you did there. It's surprising to me. Disney, they've got a pretty big presence up here with their cruises.
Sure.
And a friend of mine, I actually built a butterfly garden at this other job that I had. That I had a $250,000 budget for this butterfly garden at this country club where I was a director of communications. And this Zach Bezon is his name. He's actually the head now of Disney's conservation programs based out of Animal Kingdom in Orlando.
Oh, that's cool.
And they do all kind of grants, and they sponsor all kind of research projects and stuff. But it shocked me in talking to the Disney people. They don't have any naturalists or anything on board. They don't do any kind of like pre-trip or pre-excursion briefing at all, or anything about Juneau or the history here, the shipwrecks. I know Rich has done a couple of episodes on wrecks that actually happened here. And I had him on the show on my Substack about the wreck of the Sophia, which I've actually been on that shoal whale watching. There's a buoy there now marking it that all the sea lions get on. So you go out there to this thing and look at the sea lions. And people love it. And it's like, yeah, look, another sea lion. But the bar and grill that I really enjoy here, it's the oldest bar in Juneau, is called the Imperial Saloon. And the Imperial Saloon was a makeshift morgue for all of I guess everybody but the dog died on the boat. So they had that set up as a temporary morgue. In Key West, okay, not the oldest bar, but probably one of the most famous bars, Captain Tony's, which was the original Sloppy Joe's, was the original morgue on the island of Key West. So you've got two very, very popular bars in two different tourist destinations, as far as they can possibly be from each other, and both started out as morgues.
Well, you can probably see, Ted, why Disney don't have lecturers of any sort on their vessels, because the subject matter is hard to make light of. Even if you dressed it up and had like Moana doing the lecture, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be appropriate for the families.
I get blown away by how many people would tell me they saw whales and doll porpoise riding the bow and all this. And it seems like you ought to have somebody walking around going, oh, look, there's the Mendenhall Glacier, there's Point Retreat.
Sure.
But they don't. So I don't know. Maybe the kids wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, maybe not. They're there for different reasons. It's a different audience. So, Ted, you've been a journalist and a boat captain for over 30 years. I think you might actually be my first captain.
Really?
I think so. I mean, off the top of my head, yeah, I think you probably are. A lot of people from the...
I've got my 100-ton masters and my towing and sailing endorsements.
So what's the difference between being a 100-ton captain or being allowed to... captain a 100-ton vessel versus captain of a cruise ship?
Well, the tonnage, the gross tonnage, really.
Yeah.
The whole thing about having a master applied to it is that allows you to carry more than 6 passengers. So if the vessel, like the whale watch boats here, would carry 22 people because it's an inspected vessel and it's allowed to carry that many people. So you have to have a licensed Coast Guard master in order to run it. And I've run some bigger party barges and shit like that in Key West. I did that all through COVID, not a single mask. And somehow I managed not to get it.
Wow. Well, there must be something in the
But,
water over there.
well, and that was that we were talking about the cruise ships. That's still a big problem with them. We had one come in here with norovirus, and a bunch of our captains got sick. But I would Clorox everything down every day. So
Yeah, but they can be like floating petri dishes.
yes, that is what I refer to them as.
Yeah, okay. So 30 years, a boat captain and a journalist. What came first, the writing or the water?
Well, I was in college. You have to be, now I think it's 18, but you have to be 21 in order to get your license. So I got my license right before I graduated from college. But I had been running boats in my entire life and, mating on fishing boats and such. So
Okay.
kind of both. Kind of both hand in hand. I started in writing a fellow by the name of Bill Sargent, who was one of the few outdoor writers left at a major newspaper in Florida Today, my hometown, who hired me as an assistant when I was 15. So the irony of that is I pretty much knew everything I needed to know by the time I went to college. So
at 15?
I wasted all that. Yeah, well, at 18.
18, yeah.
So I knew pretty much everything they taught me in journalism school. It's funny. We work for tips, obviously, as members of the service industry, as a charter boat captain or a whale watch captain. And I started getting these $2 bills, and they were always on the same day every week. Now, I mean, I've been tipped $100 by one person, and I've been tipped nothing by another person. But we'd consistently get these $2 bills, and the people would be like they were handing you something special. And it come to find out, and I forget which cruise line it is, they actually give their passengers a stack of $2 bills to hand out as gratuities. And it's just, to me, it's like the most insulting thing. Don't even bother tipping me. I don't care.
$2. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, on a ticket that cost them $175.
So what is it, 10%?
Yeah, I mean, 10% is customary. I mean, I don't expect them, but
no, but 10% is the average tipping policy in the States.
Yes. Well, 20 usually.
Oh, it's 20%.
Yeah, but for a high ticket item like this, 10 is fine.
Okay. I was going to say 20%. Damn.
Well, it's funny, you struggle to see whales and you end up making, $150, $175 on a trip. And then you have the day of a lifetime and you see this bubble netting and watch it for an hour and a half. And then you see the sea lions and then you end up finding a pod of killer whales on the way back. That's like the most incredible day of whale watching you could ever have. And you get nothing.
No, if I was on board, I'm sure I would be able to. I mean, I tip my barber, but you know what?
Yeah.
Over here, we don't really have much of a tipping policy. And everything's just like, oh, how much is it? And then you just pay that exact amount. But for something when people go above and beyond, I mean...
Well, and then you have groups that come off Disney ships, and this is kind of just a little bit of inside baseball for people. But, normally companies, particularly in the Keys, if you have 4 or more people, they will tack an auto gratuity on to the more than 4, because invariably you might have 4 or 6 people in a family and get nothing. Not that I'm talking about Disney there at all, but...
We don't want to put words in people's mouths, or
I don't want them canceling me.
or losing business from any particular groups. Just say it was an industry term. Or this is why I don't do lives, Ted. People invariably put their foot in their mouth sometime. They're like, oh, wait, no, strike that from the record. What about Guatemala? You said to remind you of Guatemala.
Yeah, I went down, was one of the first people to fish there, a fellow by the name of Tim Choate, who is a huge benefactor of the Billfish Foundation. Very, very wealthy individual, big figure in sport fishing. The Choate School in Massachusetts is named after him.
How do you spell Choate?
Choate. And his family was heavily involved in Harvard. He got a law degree, didn't want to practice law. So he started jumping on boats and mating, and ended up mating for a couple of the best billfish captains in the world. Guys like Ron Hamlin, who caught in his life, I think, caught almost 100,000 billfish before he passed away for clients. But Tim started a lodge in Guatemala called Fins and Feathers. And this was back in the time before Guatemala City and the port of Iztapa, there was no main highway. So you had to take these back roads. So, we're there in a van and we're going down these back roads and there's a roadblock, which is the first time I ever experienced that. Choate looks around, he goes, anybody has anything expensive on, take it off and hide it. So we go up to the roadblock and these guys have machine guns, and it was guerrillas fighting against the Guatemalan government. Mm-hmm. And Tim handed an envelope, they waved us through. So we went on and got down there. And it was like a 3-hour trip on these back roads down to this major port called Iztapa, Ixtapa, which is where he had the lodge. And there was a cut there where he was in Puerto Jimenez. So he wasn't actually in the marina, but he was in kind of a little inshore estuary that had a cut and it had a jetty on it. And there were some really nice beach resorts just across the canal from where he had Fins and Feathers Lodge. So I was down there with the outdoor writer for the Miami Herald and a couple other fishing journalists. We were the first people to fish there at this lodge, which was really the first nice place you could go and go fish there. And I was fishing on a boat called the Magic with Captain John Legrone, who's still a good friend to this day, big time billfish captain. And I'm down below in the cockpit with my friend Carlos Solis. Now the Magic is kind of a day boat, so it doesn't have like a cabin. It's got, kind of I don't even know what you would call it, but it's all open. They don't have windshields, but they had isinglass, like the vinyl see-through stuff. And we're getting ready to go out of the cut or the inlet there. And Legrone says something in Spanish. My friend Carlos Solis was with me. He was a very, very wealthy businessman, stockbroker, went with me on the trip. And he's from Cuba, and he saw that the guy said something in Spanish to the mate, and all the mates start going around taking the isinglass off. And we're getting ready to go through this inlet, and it's got the kind of rock jetties on both sides. And we're maybe mid-speed. I mean, certainly not up to cruising speed. And we go through this inlet. We come up off this one swell, and the 31-foot Magic dives nose first into the valley of the next swell. And we took about 3,000 gallons of water through where the isinglass was into the cockpit. Now, I've got my cameras are floating around in a Pelican box. Fortunately, I didn't have them out. Our fishing rods, all are probably, $4,000 worth of fly rods are scrambling around. The mate goes over and opens up the tuna door, and the boat's kind of like, it's bogged down. All the water starts floating out of the tuna door as we start getting up on a plane. And when the wave hit, I looked over at my friend Carlos, who was kind of darker skinned, and he had a pair of sunglasses on, and all you could see was a white raccoon marks around his eyes. His eyes were so big. And, my shoes floated out of the tuna door. I blocked myself in the way so that none of the fly rods slid out of the back of the boat. My cameras didn't float out in the Pelican box. So we get through the inlet, and Carlos says something to the mate in Spanish. I said, what'd you say? He goes, I asked him if that was the worst crossing they ever had through this inlet. I said, well, what did he say? He goes, no, it was the second worst. I said, well, what was the first? He goes, they sank. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So fair enough. We get through there. We fish. We caught a bunch of sailfish on fly, and we're coming back. And I'd had enough catching fish, so I went up in the tower with John, and we're coming back in through this inlet. And he looks at me and he goes, whatever you do, and I weighed about 400 pounds at the time. He goes, whatever you do, don't take me out, because if we have a problem going through here and you knock me away from the steering wheel, we're all going to die. I'm like, oh, this should be fun. So we just go cruising right through the inlet, no problem. And I've fished here probably 8 more times, never had a problem through that inlet again. Now everybody's over in the main marina, which is, cargo ships and all kind of stuff make their way in and out. But it turns out that the engineer for the inlet there that designed the jetties embezzled a bunch of money from the project and bought his wife a Mercedes and all this other stuff and skimped on the length and the amount of rocks that needed to be used for the jetties. So it not only created a really rough situation in that inlet, but it also started eroding away, and all of these multi-million dollar beachfront resorts that were just spectacular are now in the water. They're not there anymore. So
because they skimped on the rocks.
yeah, the guy was a crook.
Damn.
Yeah, he stole money from the project. So that's how things kind of work down there.
He had it coming then.
I asked him, I said, what's it cost to start an operation like this down here? He goes, well, you got to figure out what you're going to spend, and then you double it, and then you put another 25 to 45% on it for bribes, and that'll get it done. So.
You said that was the second worst because the first worst was the one that sank, but
they hit a rock and no.
But you've been on ships that have sunk, or have you been on any?
Well, I was actually on one that exploded. So I was 6 years old. It was right after Jaws came out.
Damn.
And my father had a tackle shop in Cocoa Beach called Banana River Bait and Tackle. And one of our customers was a guy by the name of Mike Shetley, who was a contemporary of the legendary car builder, Carroll Shelby. Okay, so that was the movie. Carroll Shelby was the subject of the movie Ford and Ferrari with Mark Wahlberg. So Shetley was a contemporary of his, and this is 1976. Oil crisis going on. Jaws just came out. And Shetley had a car shop in Daytona Beach, which is not far, or more like a lab, where he was designing basically an engine that would get more than 100 miles a gallon on gas in the middle of the oil crisis. So he had taken this 36-foot Trojan and converted the engines from diesel over to gasoline so he could use this concept on this boat. And my father was his captain. So he had a bunch of guys coming in from the Ford Motor Company, which is who ended up building Shelby's Cobras and all that stuff. They ended up branding off of him. So we go down to the boat. We're there early. We get everything ready. We top off with fuel. We got 500 gallons of gasoline on the boat. And the guys from Ford never show up. So Shetley's like, well, my wife and my kids are here. Let's just go anyway. So we go, we're out fishing, and I'm running the cockpit at 6 years old. I'm down, setting the lines, doing all that stuff. And we're coming back in. We're about 10 miles offshore, just about getting to where you could see land. And my dad noticed the boat was kind of sluggish, and he hit the bilge pump switch, and the engine room, which was under the salon, blew up, exploded. Okay. The deck in the salon, thankfully, everybody was out back, but the deck in the salon actually hit the roof right under my dad and I's feet up on the bridge. And I mean, it's engulfed in flames. The 6 people in the back are freaking out. My dad looks at me, hands me his watch, his wallet, and a wad full of $100 bills and his sunglasses. And he goes, jump over and swim upwind, get away from the gasoline. Don't worry, I'll throw something to you that'll float. So I'm 6 years old. Grew up in the ocean. I jump off the fly bridge, which was kind of fun. Swim up. My dad starts getting people in the water, getting them life jackets. He threw a cooler to me, so I had something that floated, and I'm just out there bobbing around.
Something to stash the $100 bills in as well.
Yeah. So
they weren't waterproof back then.
No. So
that's the main concern.
He gets everybody off the boat except for this guy Shetley and his wife. And Shetley is there trying to fight this fire with one of those little teeny fire extinguishers that you buy at like a West Marine.
Okay.
That maybe you could put a kitchen, like a frying pan catches on fire. Maybe you could put that out with that.
Yeah.
So. Finally, my dad goes, you got to get off the boat. It's over with. And Shetley's like, no, we're staying on the boat. We're staying on the boat. And finally, my dad turns around and pops him in the face and stuns him. And my dad grabbed him and threw him over the side and then threw his wife in the water. And then he got in the water. So we ended up getting rescued by another boat, Good Samaritans, and the Coast Guard came out and got us. And it was funny because Jaws had just come out, and all these adults are freaked out about getting in the ocean. And I'm just like, oh, I got to go swimming today. Yay.
Yeah.
So to the day my father died, he was convinced that Ford Motor Company planted a bomb on that boat, and that they were trying to get rid of this guy Shetly because he had this technology to make these motors that would go 100 miles on a gallon of gas. So, and it was the middle of the oil crisis, so you can imagine.
Wow. Wow. So the boat completely sank?
Yes.
And there's no...
Took $30,000 worth of offshore fishing tackle with it. Yeah, it's gone.
Was there a diver's like wrecking? Was wreckage like salvage? You know,
it wasn't salvage. I mean, it burned to the waterline.
It burned to the waterline. So there was nothing that you could kind of look at and sort of, use as evidence to support your father's claim.
No, there wasn't anything like that.
And so, wild conspiracy. If you could take one person, living or dead, on a fishing trip with you, who would you like to take?
It's going to sound cliche, but I'd like to go fishing with Ernest Hemingway.
Hemingway?
I'm a fan of writing, and I think my two favorite pieces of writing about fishing, one was In To Have or Have Not, which was about a charter boat captain in Key West during the Great Depression.
Okay.
And he describes the Gulf Stream and the thrill of catching a marlin. It was a spectacular piece of writing. The second best piece of writing, which I think is right there with it, was actually written by a friend of mine. I actually grew up with his son in Key West, Mark Caputo. Mark Caputo now works for NBC, but his father was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune. And he wrote a book called Indian Country, which was about a friend of his in upstate Michigan that he went to Vietnam with. And it starts out on the northern peninsula of Michigan, and he just describes the beauty of fishing for trout in these rivers up there, fly fishing for them and stuff. So I think those are the two best literary pieces of writing about fishing I've ever seen. And I think Hemingway would have been interesting.
Yeah, and that's a lovely answer as well. Well put. If they made a movie about your life on the water, who do you think would play you?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Is it? Considering all the other questions I've been trying
I have to think about that. But if you look at my Substack, I've been writing about this giant corruption scandal in City Hall in Key West.
Oh.
And I'm hoping that when they make a Netflix movie out of it, that they're going to have to buy my rights to the story. So I'll have to start thinking about that.
Who would you like?
Maybe Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, yep. That's he's got a good seafarer's face, isn't he?
He wrote and got that TV series on FX made called Taboo.
I was just thinking of Taboo.
It was all about the East India
trading company
and all that, yeah. And having to do with the fur trade up here in Alaska, which was pretty much dominated by the Russians. But he was willing to trade fur for Chinese tea and circumvent the British and the whole thing, bringing tea into the North American continent. And, it went one season. It was fantastic. And then it just went away.
Oh, it cancelled?
We never saw anything else about it.
Oh, don't you hate it when that happens?
It was a shame. That was one of my favorite things on TV.
What is your favorite film or TV series that takes place on a boat or a ship, for that matter?
Captain Phillips is good, just because my personal tie with him, getting to know him a little bit.
Tom's performance at the end of that is
phenomenal.
Absolutely. When he finally breaks, amazing.
Yeah. I think Old Man in the Sea, too.
Old Man in the Sea? What was that one?
Yeah. That was Hemingway and about the old Cuban fisherman, Santiago, who was torn between his life and the fish's life. Spencer Tracy is phenomenal in that. And the footage of the giant marlin was footage that was taken in, they were actually home movies that were taken in, I believe, Cabo Blanco, Peru, where they used to have a place called the Marlin Tuna Club. And this oil man from Texas, Alfred Glassell, used to go down there for months at a time and fish for black marlin. And they'd fish out of these little boats that kind of looked like what Santiago fished out of an Old Man in the Sea. And they actually used that footage for the movie. But Spencer Tracy, what a performance as a Cuban handliner.
I've just written it down. It's on the watch list, Ted. just wanted to say thank you so much, Ted, for joining me this evening.
Well, you're welcome.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've, felt like I've learned a lot this evening, and I'm sure there's so much more you could impart story-wise.
We covered a lot of ground.
We definitely did. We definitely did. Is there anything or anywhere you'd like to push or promote? People can find you, or anything else that you've got out there?
Well, number one, my number one rule of boating, regardless of the size of the vessel, is never approach anything faster than you're willing to hit it.
Okay.
Which is a pretty good rule to live by.
Tell that to the killer whale.
Yes, but they can find me on Substack at Above the Fold by Ted Lund. It's right there, and a lot of interesting news, and some that's not so interesting. But
it's
starting to branch out a little bit.
You've got websites as well, I believe, right?
That is tedlund.com.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. And like I said, I very much enjoyed it. It was incredibly entertaining and interesting, insightful, all of those superlatives and more. So thank you, Ted. And I hope you have a safe flight back to Florida when you do travel back. Farewell, bon voyage. Thanks again, Ted. Loved it.
Thank you. All right.
Cheers, dude.
Thank you. Take care, Sam.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it. That wraps it up for this episode of Deck Tales. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've been entertained by the tales of laughter, camaraderie and the occasional stormy sea, then don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. There are lots of other shows out there to compete with, so if you are enjoying Deck Tales, why not help us out by going over to Spotify or Apple and dropping us a 5-star rating. This will boost the show's visibility and help to attract new listeners every week. Before I sign off, if you'd like to share your own stories for future episodes, then I'd love to hear from you. Simply get in touch over the socials, because after all, the best stories often come from our listeners. As we navigate through the waters of life, remember to enjoy the journey as much as the destination, as well as those you choose to share the adventure with. I've been your Captain Sammy Catling. Until next time, fair winds, smooth sailing, and may your adventures be as unforgettable as those shared here on Deck Tales. Bon voyage!